Chris Sonner, yes. Okay, that business taken care of. I would like to surrender the floor to Kathy Hill in order to make a statement concerning responses she's had from previous meetings. Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. You mean the screen is mine?
The screen is yours.
For everyone's information, yesterday I asked Chris if I could open the meeting with a statement relative to some remarks that I made during our very first financial meeting on the 8th of April, if I'm counting backwards correctly. And that was when we were just in a broad brush way talking about the state of affairs as it relates to finances in the Commonwealth and in Massachusetts, and possible ways we might be able to mitigate some of our obligations. And in the course of that conversation, I made reference to the school department as being obviously our biggest employer, and specifically noting that certain of the employees within the school department in categories that right now cannot, because of the nature of their jobs, are not in face-to-face relationships with the kids. One of a sub remark to that, and I can't recall verbatim my words, but I made reference to the fact that there's the possibility that some classroom teachers may not be in front of kids right now, and they too may be, that could be a potential place to look at some cost savings. Note to self, be careful what you say, because and in fairness, I've had some contact from classroom teachers who are not what would be considered unified arts, the musics, the band, the culinary arts, that kind of a category, phys ed and so forth. And in fact, after some very productive conversations, I'm learning that, in fact, these teachers as well, at least middle school to high, but I'm going to presume K to 12, are having responsibilities around developing lessons and being responsible for the kids' performance. So I want to just, if it helps to say words of apology, I'm happy to do that. In no way was it meant to denigrate the reputation or the skill set of any of the teachers, and I hope everyone in East Longmeadow who knows me from my 21 plus years in the district knows that I mean that sincerely. So moving forward, I just want to share with the public that in the final analysis, no one on the town council or the town manager for that matter has the legal authority in Massachusetts to direct a superintendent to make, furlough, to lay off, to take any action with a teacher. The only obligation the councils and the managers and so forth in Massachusetts have to school departments is to provide them with a bottom line budget number. And it's the total responsibility of school districts to determine how they're going to allocate that. So I just felt I wanted to make that statement in reassurance to all of our teachers out there. There's 300 plus strong. They are what makes East Longmeadow an excellent school system. And I'm proud to say that they were my colleagues, and I have many good friendships and relationships with all of them. So if Ms. Hill put her foot in her mouth, it was not intended to be that way. So thank you, Chris, for letting me do that this morning.
By all means. I would also like to reiterate and let the public know, it seems as though even last year we had to reinforce the fact that the Financial Oversight Committee is an arm of the town council, appointed by the town council. And we are advisory. We review, we research, and we recommend. And this year it'll be a daunting task, but our recommendations are based on the best information that we can obtain. And that is why we will be meeting with department heads when we have questions concerning their budgets and come up with what's best, not for just one department or another department. We try to be very objective, and we're trying to do what's best for the town and its taxpayers. That being said, I'd like to ask everyone if they received the building permit report that Kevin Duquette passed to our committee.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
Does that?
no, I did not.
Oh, I'll send it to you. I will.
Thank you.
We don't mean to forget you, Diane.
That's okay. I forgot to show up at the virtual meeting last week, so it's okay.
What happens?
So does that stem the tide on any further inquiry into the building department? They are doing well. They're doing better than this past March than the previous March of 2019. Or do you still want to reserve the fact that you might want to talk with Kevin?
I'll chime in at this point. I think that we made a very good decision last year. We also talked about offsetting that minor increase in payroll by being able to help with the position with planning. So I think that department is well staffed in its present condition. I'm always willing to talk to a department head if they have any additional information that they'd like to share, but I think it's working well.
I would echo Mike's comments. I agree. I mean, just looking at the numbers, they speak for themselves. We have an increase of over $800,000 from last year to this year. And I must assume that it's in part due to the fact that we now have an inspector who's out able to do his job and not back in the office doing mundane paperwork, to phrase it.
Okay, Jim, I would ask you to weigh in.
Maybe I didn't get the same thing as everybody, or I didn't look at it the right way. I got a journal of what looks like inspections or receipts that run for the month of March 2020.
Yes, that's what I received.
I didn't see it compared to last year in terms of whether we're up or down. I will say that it looks like there's, certainly a lot of activity, and so things aren't dormant. But it wasn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily see how it compared to last year in terms of activity.
With the second file in that email, there were two files attached. One was for March of 2020. And one
so I obviously didn't open up the one for 19. I would say in the scale of things, I would put this as a low priority item to review. So if everybody else were comfortable, I wouldn't object to passing.
Okay. All right, very good. Then we'll consider that okay for the moment. If any other further information comes in, then we can revisit it, but I would say it's okay. The other was Don's revenue report, which seems to me to kind of validate what Diane told us about escrow accounts with mortgages. It seems that we're a little bit ahead. And I think that's a very good thing. Let's see.
Chris, could I pipe in? Dawn did tell me yesterday that she received a large infusion in anticipation of the May 1st due date from CoreLogic, which is one of those tax-paying services that works with a variety of banks. The cautionary statement I would make, though, is that, as I'm sure you all know, most banks escrow those real estate payments 2 or 3 months in advance.
Yes.
So even though we had a good deposit yesterday, almost $3 million, I'm concerned that it's not really reflective of the current state of affairs.
Yes, and I think there's going to be kind of a delay in the cash impact simply because if people have been laid off or out of work or furloughed or whatever, they've had kind of a cushion perhaps, and it will probably tell more with the August 1st payment than it does for real estate and personal property than it does right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, I sent you an email yesterday concerning some revised budget numbers.
Yes, and you will be getting them shortly. I've been working on the reports for the town council because they want the third quarter report, and I have to provide that to Jeannie by Friday. So I was finishing that first, and then I will be preparing all those budgets for you. Mary did send me the information that she had on a bunch of those departments. So you'll get both the Excel, that the spreadsheet that matches what the 313 budget says, as well as then you'll get a separate file that will say what the departments are proposing to cut. So then you can see that transition.
Okay, very good. So we'll, hopefully if you have to do that, the third quarter report by Friday, we would have that before our meeting next Wednesday.
That's my hope, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Everyone got the meeting notices that I had the meetings posted?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, for the next 2 Wednesdays.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Last week we left off at the end of Public Works, and we had some questions on the trash collection and the waste collection.
Chris, before we go on, I just have a question on our format.
Yeah.
Each time we speak, the person who's speaking seems to have take the space or are we able to just, maybe that's just me. I can just do a gallery view. All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay.
It was a Zoom technical problem, which
Okay.
I'm now good for.
All right. We're going to pick up on, it was item 300, which is education. The salary request is $26,654,525, which is an increase of $561,849. And the non-salary item is $5,739,455, which is an increase of $658,221. So the grand total request from the Education Department is $32,393,980, which is a 3.9% increase, which equates to $1,220,070. I did have a few items from the school.
Chris, could I interrupt you for just a minute?
If you will. Yes.
Sarah, didn't the school submit a subsequent submission beyond what Chris is referring to? She just referenced a 3.9 increase, and I thought it was more like 4.3.
No, the 4.3 is with the additional positions, but remember you had asked me to remove all the additional positions. So that's the number that then Chris is referring to. So 3.9 is without those additional positions.
Okay. So there's still some, I think, some room for discussion eventually. The school department, they've not acquiesced in that situation.
Yeah. I just want to make the committee aware of some of the information that the school passed on. We mentioned about the retirements, and they have retirements from Birchland Park, it's a special ed teacher, Maple Shade, a phys ed teacher, high school 12-month secretary, high school 10-month secretary, a Mountain View paraprofessional, and a Birchland Park paraprofessional. The savings I didn't add this all up, but 33, 43, 43 and 6, about $50,000 would be the savings when they consider that they would be hiring replacements. So that was one item from the school that was received. Also, the Medicaid reimbursement that I had inquired about, last year we had received $215,474. And this year, as of April 6th, they have posted $144,321 that will go into the general fund. I would guess that by the end of the year, I was looking at the average per month, and I would guess that we'd be close to the 200,000 mark come the end of this fiscal year. So let's see. That's it on the school information that I've been able to obtain, other than the fact that we have a great deal of school expense embedded in our budget. It comes almost to $2.6 million, which is debt that's already on the books. The IT department being based at the school mainly as a support for the school, not mainly, but a huge part of the support for all of their Chromebooks and all of their IT technology at the school. And also DPW with the management of the buildings, the utilities and so forth. I had calculated that. I have so many papers here. I can tell you specifically. The school principal and interest to be paid this coming fiscal year is $1,435,000. This is for various school renovations. IT operational expense is close to $500,000. It's $498,285. The DPW repairs and utilities for the buildings are $671,518. So there's $2,604,803. This does not include the cost of the police department. I did not receive a response. There's a resource officer that is stationed generally at the high school with a cruiser and the crossing guards. And it does not include any capital projects or purchases as far as Chromebooks. Again, what's included in the capital request budgets. So I would ask everybody to be mindful of that. I think before delving any further into the school budget, we will probably need to meet with the superintendent and Pam, the business manager for the school. And I would say I would rather do that at some point towards the end of May, so we may have a better idea of where we're going. How does the committee feel about that? It's just my suggestion. I'm open to any other suggestion. Oh, silence.
I mean, either way is fine, Chris. I mean, it's the biggest one, so one could make an argument, talk to them sooner rather than later. But if the argument is the longer we go, the more we may know about the situation and whatnot, that would make sense to maybe put it a little.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments as well. I think as each week goes by, we need more and more direction and more information from the state. And not knowing what their contribution is to the town is certainly going to be difficult to set a budget.
Yes. Well, they are. They're about 59% of our budget. So I I took it upon myself to start researching what they call the foundation budget, which is what the Department of Education recommends for all the cities and towns for the school districts. And I want to educate myself on the difference between what they call the foundation budget is the local contribution, which is what we pay out, and what state aid would be. So I'm not sure if they've come out with any figures for fiscal 2021. And so that's one of the reasons I suggested doing it a little later.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
I did have a question, going back to Mary's comment about the budget that's in our summary sheets here.
Mm-hmm.
Since Sarah mentioned it, it's not the budget that the school submitted, it's the budget minus the 2 additional positions that we took out, but the school hasn't agreed to yet. It seems to me maybe we should probably be using for now the budget that they submitted and have agreed to. I think the discussions, we'll have to have those discussions about the positions and whatnot, but it might be better to put the bigger budget in for now until we have those discussions and have some understandings.
Yes, that's a good suggestion. I gave you the adjusted amount. Their actual request was $32,560,352, which was an increase of $1,386,442. I believe you must have that in your packets. The original request, the itemized one versus so actually it was a 4.45% request increase. And with the elimination of those 2 positions, it came down to 3.9%.
No, that's exactly right. And that was my point, because I don't think we have the discretion to tell them to cut positions. It's more a more universal analysis of the whole budget.
You're right.
Versus line by line or.
Yes.
And also, just as an aside, I did receive a message this morning from Gordon. Unfortunately, I couldn't speak with him when he called, but he wanted to let me know that in light of the school closure announcement yesterday, he and Pam Blair, he said, are now in a position where they can make some more definite progress on identifying funds that perhaps could be turned back to the town from fiscal 20. And that even though the ongoing distance learning presents other challenges for their department, he wants to talk about it. So whenever your committee feels it's appropriate to discuss their budget in particular with them, I'm certain that both Gordon and Pam and perhaps the whole school committee would be happy to sit with us.
Sounds like a good plan, Mary. I think if we delay our review until the end of May, you may have more time to talk with them. And because after all, according to our charter, the town budget is yours, but to be voted on by the council. So I appreciate the work you're doing in talking with them and proposing things. So I think you brought up a very good point. It's not up to us to cut any positions. It's up to us to appropriate an amount of money that they live with, and they distribute it according to their needs.
Yes.
Okay.
I would just like to add one piece that the last school committee meeting that took place, myself and Kathy were part of that meeting, and there'll probably be another meeting, I believe, and I can ask Kathy that we will be attending. Is that right, Kathy, prior to?
Yes, Gordon and Greg Thompson, their chair of the committee, indicated that they have another executive session scheduled for this coming Monday evening, the 27th, and would be inviting us back in to join them. That's correct.
So that would enable us to provide more information to our Budget Finance Committee and give us enough, more direction going forward. But I think the path we're on is the correct path right now at this point in time.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mike.
I have I maybe file challenge, but I'm trying to find my detail school budget in the packet of the stuff that I had received, and I'm having trouble finding it. Did I just miss it?
I don't know. It was submitted on March 24th, so it was a great deal later than some of the others. If you wish,
Submitted. Did we get it by email then afterwards, or?
yeah, I think so.
All right, then I'll just look for it. I'll look for it in my email.
Well, Jim, there is a 3-page detail sheet. Do you have all your documents with you today?
I thought I did, yes.
I've got it as pages 253 to 255, so it's not a lot of detail, but those are the only hard copies I have in my paperwork also.
I have 253 through 258 and an accompanying email from you, I believe, Mary.
That doesn't surprise me.
No, it's not from you.
Oh, good.
So if you don't have it all, Jim, I'll be glad to scan it and send it to you after the meeting.
Sure. I guess I'm more familiar with seeing their more detailed breakout of everything, that they typically use. But yeah, for some reason I either missed it or I'm just passing over it and not seeing it. So if you could resend it to me, thank you, Chris.
All right. I'm putting a note on it now so I can.
Sorry about that.
All right. So we have decided that we are definitely going to meet with education probably at the end of May. So let us go on from there.
Chris,
Yes.
if I may, just for those who maybe have just tuned into this and missed our last meeting, due to the information provided to us by the state and the lack of information we currently have to make an educated budget for the town, we're going to be moving this off most likely to the end of the summer. So the deadlines that we currently have been waived, and at meeting at the end of May would give us more time.
Yes. Okay, all agreed. All right. The next item was 399, the school committee. I don't believe I have their initial request, which was their stipends were at 8,500, and they were asking for 18,000 this year. And Mary, it has been adjusted in our summary budgets that there would be no increase.
That's what I have. No increase.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those are the other pages. I just had them in a different folder, Chris. You're right. Yeah, apparently in the beginning, there was a request for an increase in the stipend from 1,600 to 3,500 per school committee member, and then a slight addition for the chair. So that's what's on your submission. That I don't know that that's ever been withdrawn formally by them.
Probably not.
So the summary I'm looking at says no 0% increase for the.
Yeah, that was after
That's what I
Mary's
have.
review. What they wanted to do was to have 4,000 for the chairman, and then, as you say, $3,500 each for each of the members.
Yeah.
I recall that last year we gave them a 2.5% increase. And I think that's something that can be discussed.
On a much smaller scale, I would suggest we put in what they asked for in this summary until we talk to them and make a recommendation.
So we'll talk with them at the same time as we talk with the school committee because they'll be present.
But I would think that we should put in the higher number for now.
Yeah. The 18,000.
Is that what it is?
Yes. Yes, it's page 257. Everyone agreed we will tackle that request at the same time as we tackle the education request.
Yes, revisit.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. On to the next page of the summary.
Library?
That would be 610, the library.
I'm on the fence over this one. I'm not quite sure whether it's worth trying to.
Let's see, their total request is $807,375. It's an increase of 2.3%, with a total increase of $18,239. I know that there is a stipulation that they have to spend X amount of dollars on
Yes.
books, purchases. It's a state requirement for them. And there again, I think there may be things within the budget that Mary is more aware of than we are. And I caution you again, it is Mary's budget. Or the town manager's budget, I should
Thank
say.
you. That's better.
The town manager's budget. There is no overtime in this budget. Do you have the original submittal, everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
That's one of the departments that I gave some updated information to Sarah about last week that,
So there's a
Might make a-
possible reduction.
oh, definitely, yeah. Right.
Okay.
Maybe you haven't had a chance to look at it, Sarah, but it was one of the emails from the department heads that I,
I did see it, but I haven't gotten to put it in yet.
but there are some reductions forthcoming in the library budget
All
based
right,
on the
so-
director's suggestion.
So we'll put that on hold for the time being until we get the new information.
Yep.
All agreed?
Yes.
All right, recreation. Total budget request is 252,521.34, which is actually a reduction, a decrease of 10,740.28, which is a percentage decrease of minus 4.1%. I don't know who can argue with that.
Sorry to keep interrupting you, Chris, but recreation was another department that has some reductions that have been forwarded to Sarah for updates.
Okay,
They recently had a resignation of one of their full-time staff, and there's no plan to fill that position for the
Okay.
balance of this year and into fiscal '21. So their budget will show a reduction that's not insignificant.
yeah. All right, very good. And they also have a revolving fund that supports.
Sorry, guys. Don't know how to mute.
Sounded nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like heaven.
Interlude.
Angels harps.
All right, moving on. Number 693, celebrations, cultural, historical, actually has a $200 decrease, 26,775. And I would say that probably is related to our 4th of July celebration.
Yes. And that's a subject of some conversation currently.
Yeah, Ryan gave us a little bit of information earlier. So I would just request that Ryan keeps us posted on that. I know in past, some selectmen and so forth tried to cut that money, and there was a hue and a cry from the townspeople. So,
I think the Appropriations Committee might have tried it one time too.
did they? A very unpopular thing to do.
Yes, it is.
So, 693 we'll leave as is, with Ryan giving us any updates as we get closer to that period of time.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'm leaving that as an okay for now.
Yes.
That's an okay for now. Okay. Overall, culture and recreation, which is library, the recreation department and celebrations, came in with a just 0.7% increase. So moving on, we'll go to the Council on Aging, number 541. Overall increase is 1.7%. They're asking for $354,113.75. An increase of $5,942.01. They too have a revolving fund that helps support a lot of their programs. I'm looking to see here if there's a difference between what's on the summary. 354, 113. There is no difference. It sounds like a pretty.
Sounds reasonable to me. I wouldn't
Does to me.
recommend bringing them in.
Yeah. I think Carolyn does a pretty good job down there with the funds that she has. How do you feel about it, Mike and Tom? One at a time.
I'm fine with the numbers. I mean, they're small increases compared to some of the other various accounts that we have.
Yes.
The only thing I would like to revisit is, as always, every year, is the revolving funds to see where we stand.
Okay.
I find the increase is very modest at best. So I would leave this alone as it is at this point.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, the only increases in there are salary increases. Obviously might be steps and grade changes, and that's only 5,000. I shouldn't say only, but it's 5,322. And in the non-salary, they had a $620 increase. I would say for the time being that one's okay and not worthy of further review, unless we get really slammed with a loss of revenue. 543 is the next one, which is Veteran Services. There are absolutely no increases in that budget. It's the request is for $146,919, and he services the veterans. And a lot of the times when he does pay out to the veterans, if they need emergency assistance in any way, we are reimbursed by the state, which he's responsible for filing for. So I would say with a 0%, that is an acceptable budget.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Just a note of clarification, we are reimbursed for 75% of it.
75%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and it's usually a 12 to 18 month delay.
So you really
See the
don't,
top of her head.
you get it until the next fiscal year, basically. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So overall, Human Services has got a 1.2% increase. These other things are things that you probably, Sarah, you're going to have to fill us in on. Payroll taxes, you're estimating are going to go up 1.2% by $6,400 for an amount of $534,500. Not much we can do to control that. Now,
Well, that is based on the payroll figures that I had in the spreadsheet. So as other things change, that number will fluctuate because it's based on a percentage of the salaries. It's 1.45% of the salaries. So as the things change, that number will keep changing. So it's one of the last numbers that I can finalize because it's contingent on everything else.
Okay. So that's a contingent number to be revisited. Or finalized, I should say. Workers' compensation. There's an increase in that of 39.9%, went from 248,263 to 347,298, an increase of $99,000. And the occasion for that, Sarah, again?
That was based on our workers' comp claims history. And so it's a rolling period. And unfortunately, in this period of time that is part of our premium, we've had a lot of cases. And so we're seeing the effects of that. It takes a while before it hits us, but we are seeing those effects.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, Chris, workers' compensation, that's someone gets hurt on the job, or what is that?
Yes, injured on duty.
We've had more people
Injuries.
get hurt on the job?
So for example, still within this premium period, we had still the bus drivers, which could have things. They used to sometimes have falls in the bus yard, things of that nature. It could be somebody in DPW, maybe got injured doing something on duty, or it could be any department, but those two, and then the school as well, if they are injured while working. So those are the three biggest ones, usually in our claims history. As you know, we no longer have the bus drivers, so that will be dropping off, but unfortunately it is still considered because it's still part of that time frame.
Chris?
Yes.
If I may too, I'd like to just make a couple of points here. I think, I know as far as insurance goes, we're in a hard market. And thank you, Sarah, for our workers' comp claim history. But that's a substantial amount of money. And I think that we ought to revisit this and maybe ask Mary to see if we can shop this to reduce that cost. I mean, that's a substantial increase. And in addition to that, maybe there's a possibility of creating some sort of safety position in the town to help reduce this cost. There are a number of companies that are much smaller than our town, which have safety professionals, which manage this and other workers' comp positions to keep those costs down. And that's through education and training, and also through their experience in the workforce.
Last year, the town manager did form a committee for safety and to look at areas like that to also help. The insurance company also offers a couple of different kinds of courses that if employees participate, then we can earn credits for it. So I know that had started. I was not a member of that committee, and I don't know where they left off or if they're still meeting or anything of that nature. But I do know that there was one that was started to try to help with that because of the amount of that cost of that increase is so big.
I do remember, and I had that conversation in the past, and there are a number of insurers out there who will provide a safety professional to come in to the town and provide some training and insight and recommendations to help alleviate some of this, potentially alleviate some of these workers' comp claims.
Through the chair, Chris.
Yes.
So injuries are one part of it, and I would agree. I mean, anytime we can keep everyone safer and save the town money is a good piece. But we might want to revisit this because I think we all know that the workman's comp fee is a direct correlation in our total payroll for the entire town. And while we're reviewing that, talking about possible layoffs, furloughs, and everything else, it could have a significant impact on this dollar amount down the road.
Agreed. So we will flag this for discussion with the town manager.
Consider it flagged.
Okay, thank you.
I had one other question, just mechanical.
Certainly.
So the premium is based on a multi-year accident experience, that sounds like.
Right.
So does that mean that in a future year, if our accident experience goes down, this premium would go down?
That's what it should mean.
Right. I think it's 3 or 5 years is what they do a look back with. I don't remember the exact number.
And I would think that makes sense in a way of trying to protect the town or the insured from having a huge spike in premiums based on one bad year.
Yeah.
But it didn't work very well because we must add a few bad years to invoke that kind of spike.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Sorry.
we did have a few really bad years. But yes, and we have seen in the past that they have gone down. And actually, ironically, in some of those years that we had a lot of workers' comp claims, we had a very low premium because it was the after effects of other ones. So that is what typically happens. But I think these are great suggestions.
Right. I think what I like to see as far as the whole goes, so we have additional information, is to look at our experience rate over the next 3 or the past 3 or 5 years. I'm sure we have that information and the insurer can provide it to see where the breakpoints are and how we can move forward to try to reduce that cost and the safety of our employees.
Sounds like a good inquiry, Tom. Thank you. All right, that one's flagged for further discussion and inquiry. 914, which is health and life insurance. This is a budget buster. The amount last year was $6,228,954. This year, the requested amount to cover the health and life insurance is $7,150,004, which is an increase just shy of $1 million at $921,050. It's a 14.8%. I don't know. I don't believe that's a controllable increase at this point in time. We offer many different plans. Is that correct? Oh, Corinne is here.
We do offer a few different plans. And the insurance rates, these are with the insurance rates for fiscal 21 that have been set for the active employees. The retiree rates have not been set yet, but the retirees are included in that. So you see both their active as well as essentially the OPEB liability that we wind up paying out each year is included in that figure. And so one of the two largest plans had a 6% and a 4% increase, as well as then people are changing their life situations, whether they're going from a single plan to a family plan. Some positions that before maybe the person in that position chose not to take the town's health insurance, and now their replacement position they have, or they've had other changes. So it is based on the most recent bill. Sorry about that. The baby's calling somebody on my phone. So it is based on the most recent rates, as well as that we do have a couple of places in there for, I believe it's 5 family plans for the vacant positions, that if they were filled in worst case scenario that they took that, because as I said, people's life changes, and so they could be in a single now and go to family, or vice versa. But I feel that there's very little that we can do with that figure.
Does this reflect the whole cost of the plan? The employee's contribution is calculated into this, or no?
No, this is the employer portion only.
And what percentage does the town pay?
70% of the active, and then the retirees, the town pays 50%, which is state law. Or below that per state law. A town can choose to pay more than that if they wanted to, but we don't. And it does include also the cost of the OPEB actuarial review is in that figure. That cost is in there, as well as then the Medicare penalties that we have some people that fell in in this funky little category that we wind up having to pay Medicare penalties.
Uh-huh.
But that's a very tiny number of that 7 million.
Now, the 70% for active employees, is that a negotiated number? Is that state mandated?
That is not state mandated. The state mandated is a minimum of 50%. And so you can pay anywhere above that. One of the possible cost saving measures that has been discussed over the past few years has been about whether or not to change that percentage. If that were to happen and the town were to choose that they would want to do that, that is something that would have to be negotiated with all of the different unions, and then a payment made for that as well, just like when we changed to have a deductible plan, because that was another way to have some cost savings. There are a couple of other things that we have that are in the works at trying to help to mitigate costs for the future. It's just not really going to have an impact on our fiscal 21 budget.
Okay. Chris, if I may, I'd like to see this put on hold for further discussion. I'm not sold to that this is, a firm number that we have no control over. I'd like to look at all possibilities and talk to and maybe talk to the insurers to see what we can do. I know this is a hard market, but we're talking $921,000 increase. That's huge.
Yeah. That unfortunately, Tom, we can certainly mark it for future discussion. But if they've already come out with their fiscal 21 rates, I would imagine it applies to any municipality that they're doing business with. But I certainly will flag it. And if you want to do further inquiry, we can do that. Thank you.
Just so you know, we were about to do some sort of investigation to your earlier point, Tom, about safety inspectors, reviewing the Scantic Valley Trust, of which we're a member, just to see if there were options there through other insurers, but the COVID sort of interrupted that process, so we kind of put that on hold. But we knew that rates were increasing significantly and was going to be a budget buster, as you say, Chris. And so we were trying to get our arms around that, but had to suspend that activity temporarily anyway.
Thank you, Mary. Liability insurance is the next item, 945. And that actually is seeing a decrease of $23,334. The requested amount in the proposed budget is $321,777, a minus 6.8, which seems like such good news after the previous number.
Yeah. Sarah, is this due to the buses?
No, it's not due to the buses. Give me a minute. I need to think what it's due to. Hold on. I have to think for a second. But I know the buses was reflected in last year because we had buses in fiscal 18. Fiscal 18. So we would have seen that big decrease then. Hold on.
Oh, Sarah, I think you moved the unemployment compensation
Yep.
Liability to a different account. So it's not really it's not a substantive reduction. It's moving money.
No, it is unemployment actually. It's the bus driver's unemployment that we don't have now. So it's not the buses, the insurance on them, unemployment costs for them.
Okay.
So that's the big driver.
So that's
No pun
the reason for
intended.
the decrease.
Oh, yes.
Is that
Okay.
equating to approximately 40% of this?
Say that again, please.
Is that equating to approximately 40% of this under the non-salary expense? 5181?
It's 5181 is the unemployment. And then there were also some minor adjustments in the property insurance premium, and those were the two big ones, was the unemployment and the property. And we did pretty well with the property for our renewal. So that helped, whereas all the other insurance, they had gone up. Does that answer your question?
It does. The unemployment is a direct consequence of not having the bus drivers.
Right. And
Less to the savings here. So it does. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions on this item? 946, retirement assessment. Last year's amount was $3,359,146. This year's request is $3,888,627 for an increase of $529,482. An overall increase of 15.8, and this assessment comes from the Hampden County Retirement Board?
Yes.
Yes. Nothing negotiable about that. Correct?
I don't believe it's negotiable, Chris. I think those are statutory benefits that are controlled by, by statute.
Yeah. It probably includes a COLA for the coming year, I would guess. They probably voted on that at some point. Or is it just new retirees?
The retirement payment is our portion of our normal contribution, as well as you all know, all of the pension plans, pretty much all of them across the state, are underfunded. And so Hampden County Regional Retirement is not an exception to that. But as part of the trying to get it to the fully funded, a portion of this payment goes towards our portion of that liability. So I believe it's in the next 5 years or so, we should be fully funded, the last time I had checked. So at that point when we are, I would imagine it would either go down or even out. But right now we are required to make those, and we don't get a say or get to adjust it at all. We do take advantage of, if we pay the full amount in July, we get, I think it's a 3% discount for doing it then, rather than breaking it into two payments. And we do always take advantage of that. And that usually equates to, I want to say, $30,000 or $40,000.
Very good. Very good. Every bit helps.
Chris, I just want to make sure, it seems like every year I have to ask the same questions to remind myself what these things do. So Sarah, this is where we're playing catch up, because like the estimates, the projected investment income or income on the fund because of low interest rates. And now I hate to think what it would be next year based on what happened to the stock market earlier this year. So it's like we're always going to be fighting this underfunding. It can get worse as the investment picture looks worse, or the interest income or bond income looks worse. Is that correct?
Well, yes, that is correct. On the flip side, which might come off sounding a little harsh, but the actuarial tables also take into account how long people live. So as those happen, or as our population that falls within this group continues to age and people therefore do die, then that impacts our directly the amount that we have to pay for that. So it's all combined. It is going to be very interesting based on how the stock market does and the markets just in general over the next year or two, and how that's going to impact it. But it will impact both this, the OPEB liability, and just investments in general. But trying to get to that point to be fully funded, then it should be able to handle it within a certain range, is how the actuaries calculate it. But with this, it might have a significant effect.
And this retirement assessment, sorry, Chris, I just wanted to,
It's fine.
this retirement assessment is based on, is for active employees,
It's anybody in the retirement that qualified. So our active employees, yes, they are contributing, so we are paying for that. But then it's also our current retirees or anybody who wound up being fully vested in it. So it's for all of them.
So we're keeping the funding going for all of our to try to be funded for all of the retirees as well. So it's just kind of a
right and
growing pile that we're having to fund.
And I mean, there will be a small population in here that you're making the contribution because it was actuarially determined, but then that person winds up not either collecting or not being. Sorry, the baby muted me. So winds up not being fully vested. And, but then that essentially extra goes towards your overall total picture. So it's not like that then you get any back. But yes.
Okay, so this is something that'll just keep growing.
Yes, absolutely. The longer people live, the more it will grow. I want to say 2 years ago, maybe, that in the actuarial world, they updated a bunch of their tables because people were living longer than their tables. And so they had done a new calculation of that. And people overall are living longer. Females live longer than males. You know, there's all kinds of things, as well as then individual health factors. They had been smokers or not, and all of that beyond my realm.
All right, so this is a scary budget. Okay.
Scary.
Sorry.
So have we all determined that this is an item that is non-negotiable?
In terms of once the bill is set, it sounded like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
The
It
only
sounds
good
like
thing
it's
is
a
the
done
3%.
deal.
So. Okay. All right. Insurance overall has gone up 14.3%. The next category is 710, general fund. This is the principal payable on debt. Has increased by 177,532 for an increase of 7.8%. The principal payment for fiscal 21 is going to be $2,456,884. We committed to it. That's it. There's a payment to be made. I don't know if there's any refinancing abilities at this point in time because of the lower interest rates. I would defer again to Sarah. Can't hear you, Sarah.
Sorry, I realized I was on mute. There might be one that we possibly could refinance, and that's something that we will look at, especially because we are looking at whether we're going to be bonding or doing a short-term note payable for the items that had been approved in last year's budget. And so we've started working with our finance consultant to say, okay, let's gather all the documents that are needed, and then let's see where we are. So I don't have anything solid yet on that, but we'll have to get back to you.
Okay, so we'll mark that for revisiting.
Yep.
Community preservation principle, which comes out of the community preservation monies, 80,000, 80,000, no tax impact there, correct?
Correct.
Chris, excuse me, that appears to have the same account number as the general fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yes, that's correct. So
Okay.
I just separated on the budget to make it easier. So you can see on the revenue side, you'll see that exact amount coming from community preservation in, and then that exact amount going out. So the community preservation has a zero impact over the whole budget. But I
Right.
found that a lot of people got confused when we didn't separate it and then thought that the general fund was paying for community preservation projects, and that's not the case.
Okay.
So it does all go to one GL account number though.
Okay.
Good question. General fund interest, this is the interest paid on our debt. Excuse me. Was 402,978 last year, going up to 531,203,000, an increase of 31.8%, 128,255. Might that change? Sarah?
That might possibly change, just like the principal, if we have any that are up that we can refinance. I know, I want to say it was the year before last, we had some that were close but hadn't quite reached that point where you could do it without a penalty. So I think we might be at it this year. So that's what I'm going to take a look at.
Would you do it before the month of June or during the month of June?
Yes, I do not like to bond in June if I can avoid it, because year end is already stressful enough.
Yes.
But we might not have a choice this year, but as long as it's not June 30. So we should have some more information for you in the next couple of weeks before the end of May, so then you can have more information.
Very good. There was a question from someone?
Yeah, Chris, I just had a question. So it went up 128,000, 32%. Is that because we put on new borrowings last year and now we got to pay the interest for it?
Yes.
All right.
All right. Again, another number 751, community preservation. That's the interest. Again, that's a wash. Money from the preservation fund is paid in and out, no impact on the taxation. Short-term borrowing, that would be like an anticipation of revenue, I would assume. Number 752.
That is our placeholder for if we do any new borrowings this year. So based on whether we are borrowing for capital or anything of that nature, we know we're going to have to make some kind of payment in that fiscal year, presumably the first interest payment. So that is our placeholder for what we would estimate most likely would be bonded and what that would be. Now, if we ultimately don't wind up having anything approved in the capital for bonding, then we won't need that for fiscal 21.
Okay. Right. Thank you,
Does
Sarah.
that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that
Yes.
one's okay? We're not going, are we revisiting that one?
I'm
okay with it.
I'm okay with it. She said,
Okay.
she said
That's
it's a
fine. Just good notes.
placeholder. Does John ever have to borrow in anticipation of revenues? Since we've been quarterly, I wouldn't think that would be the case.
No,
Okay.
not since I've been here has the town needed to do that.
Good. All right. Number 752, again, is a subcategory of the short-term borrowing, and there is nothing in there for this year. There are no intentions on borrowing on the part of the community preservation group. So the debt service has actually gone up 8.3% from one year to the next. These other financing uses, I believe, capital projects, we've projected what's been requested. Last year, $1,049,635 was expended. And this year there is a request from departments to spend $1,481,465, which is an increase of $431,830, a total increase of 41.1%. That definitely will need scrutiny.
To clarify, departments did request more than that in capital. This is the adjusted number based on Mary and my discussions with departments, using some of the items that are minimums. So for example, the next payment for the ladder truck or the next payment for the ambulance, those kinds of things.
Yes.
Just a sec. Or then there was, I believe it was the DPW vehicles that when Mary and I spoke about that some of them are in such disrepair, we said, okay, let's see if we were to try to replace all the ones that they had put on their request list. But it does not include everything. There were more requests than that. And as Mary had stated in, I think it was the last meeting or maybe the meeting before that, we haven't really gone back to look at capital. But obviously that would need more scrutiny.
I would request of the town manager, Mary, where do we stand on review of the capital projects? Is that something you want to meld with this committee? How's Ryan doing? I know that you've had plenty of things to do with COVID-19.
Well, Ryan we're a little bit stalled on that. Brian is going to serve as chair. We just spoke briefly about it yesterday. So I've asked him to put a committee together. I think I'm going to have Bruce Fenney on it. And I'm not sure who else yet, but I'm very concerned about the capital budget. In fact, some of the projects that were approved in last year's budget that haven't yet come to fruition in the sense of being implemented, I'm actually considering whether or not we ought to just defer some of those projects and not spend that money. So that's a subject that needs a lot of further review. I'm not sure that we can afford it this year. Because even as Sarah just said, the adjustments we made on the capital submissions that were made by departments, those are really done in January and early February. So they were before the significant onset of the revenue aspect of this health crisis. So that really does need to have another look.
Would you want?
Oh, your question was, do I want this committee to be helpful? That would be great. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Then we can set time. I believe we all have excuse me. We all have copies of the capital request individually.
Mhm.
How best to proceed? I know that there are some things that stand out to me that could probably be deferred to future years. There are some things that stand out to me as valid requests for the current year. Several of them are valid, but I think we have to prioritize. So let us discuss this next week.
Okay.
And I would ask you all to do a quick review, look at them, look at the summary. And if you have the time to look at the individual request, and we'll go from there. Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Mike? Jim?
The only thing I'm thinking, Chris, one possibility is, but I don't know what the timing is, would be, Ryan goes ahead with his committee, he screens and comes back. I mean, theoretically, it would either be at the level that it's in our summary page now, or he would be recommending to Mary and therefore to us some level lower than that. And is that where we review at the time?
I think so. I think I certainly don't want to undermine Ryan's efforts and his committee's efforts, because that's what transpired last year, was that the capital committee had reviewed everything and then presented it to us. And then we did our review, did our inquiries, and made a few minor changes to it.
Right.
So I would suggest that we prepare ourselves, familiarize ourselves with the request and where it stands, and then Ryan's committee will get back to us.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, okay. All right, stabilization fund. We're suggesting that the same amount be placed in. This seems like an odd number, 43.
Well, I'm trying to remember, Chris. I think last year we had some last minute final adjustments the night that the budget was approved by the town council.
Yeah.
And in order to balance it, it seems to me that we wound up having to take a little bit out of what we had originally budgeted for the stabilization fund.
Yes.
So this was just what we happened to wind up with as a matter of balancing the budget. I don't think it's the budget for the stabilization fund that we started with and had intended to recommend.
I agree.
That's absolutely correct. The original amount was 100,000.
So we might have to have some discussion. Obviously, it's a discretionary amount. It
Yes.
goes into our stabilization fund. It's treated as part of our reserves, correct?
Yes.
Sarah? And so it's really, we're trying to salt it away for stuff that you could use from the stabilization fund. So this year being a
I
very
think we're salting it away for a time like this.
yes, well, that's the possibility, Mary. So 43 may not, it may be low for a good reason at this point.
Well, only that I wouldn't think, yeah, that the past norm contribution to that might need to be reviewed this year, just depending on what happens in the next couple of months.
Well, you're right. Stabilization is for emergencies, so it does require some attention on our part. The OPEB trust fund, right now there is nothing in there. I know last year we were able to put a considerable amount in. Whether we'll be able to do that this year or not, that's going to come down to the final hour when we're finalizing the budget.
Just for information purposes, in the past years, we usually put 50,000, 50 to 75,000 in the budget. But due to where the numbers were falling, I left it the same as the prior year, which the prior year we wound up doing none because we took it from free cash instead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Compensated absences fund, that's a relatively new fund, 53,000, same as 75,000.
75, yeah.
We currently have a liability of close to $500,000. And we have, I think, a quarter of that in our fund.
Okay. Okay. The valuation services fund, something close to our hearts. Diane. Same amount as last year, 53,000.
Yes.
Why does that say 100%? It's the same. Okay. And that's for services of a vendor coming in and providing. When is the next full revaluation for the town? Is it 23? Fiscal
Yes.
23?
Yes, fiscal 23. And so that'll be in the summer of 2022
Right.
that we'll be working on that.
Okay. Do you know how the board is feeling about interim valuations this year? Is there, do you see anything as far as the growth, the activity? From what I see from, you'll be basing everything on 2019 activity as far as sales, but the growth will be through June 30th of this year?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
So we've done a very quick review or preliminary review on sales, and I've discussed with the Board of Assessors that there's a possibility that the values could remain the same, but we also could increase the values. And again, that's solely a decision of the Board of Assessors. I'm thinking that it is going to creep up a little bit, the valuations, based on what the sales were, but we also need to take a review of what is currently happening in the market also, because we always look 6 months after the deadline to make sure that the market is still being consistent. And from what I've actually been seeing, regardless with this COVID-19 and lack of people actually going to houses, the houses are still selling, and they're selling at what the list prices are. So it's still an indication that the market is still hanging in there. I don't know what the future will be.
okay, thank you for that.
Can I ask Diane a question on that particular subject?
Certainly.
Mhm.
Diane, would you agree that if there are some properties that the evaluation is creeping up in, and it might be the market from let's just say 400 or 500 down, and the high end market, those evaluations, in my opinion, seem to be moving the other way?
We have discussed that, and sometimes it's a little bit hard when you're doing a global change when you look at the overall market. So we may have to address some of the $400,000 or $500,000 homes more on an individual basis, but the majority, anything below that, the sales are right up there. So the 2023 reevaluation, that's when we really dissect all of these issues, and then we readjust whether it is the more higher end homes having a more of a reduction, and then the more moderate, mid to moderate in properties, they would be being adjusted accordingly based on, you know, what the market is bearing. So the assessors naturally are always open to listening to anybody who has the concern about their value, and that is done through the abatement process, but we do our best to get the values to be fair and equitable.
That's great. The only correlation I was trying to draw is that because one property has increased in value doesn't mean that that's relevant, that would carry through for every property throughout the town of East Long Meadow. And just a quick comment would be, as I was stating, and if I even disregard the 500 market, I would say from 750 up, obviously, the statistics that I have to date do not show an increase in value, but all those properties, and I'm talking through numerous communities. I've looked at Wilbraham, Hamden, East Long Meadow, and Long Meadow, and those properties from a minimum of 750 and up are declining right now in valuation. So my comment is it's not one size fits all for those that are listening in.
Certainly. Okay, thank you, Diane.
Yep.
S&I deficit, we don't have anything there. Community Preservation Fund, this is the percentage that's applied to the real estate taxes, I assume. That would, Sarah, would you confirm that? Okay.
Yes.
So that's anticipated revenue
Yes.
to go into the Community Preservation Fund.
Chris, I'm just, with that, is that another one where there's an offsetting revenue to the general fund?
No, this is what's going to be collected through the real estate taxes, the percentage that's on there. And that's the amount that is anticipated to be collected in the coming year, but it goes into the Community Preservation Fund. Am I correct, Sarah?
Yes, that's what I did.
Yeah, what is the current
Surcharge, Jim.
percent?
It's a surcharge.
The current percent?
That's the increase. The
Yeah,
three.
but no, what's the current?
That's 1%,
1%, I thought.
I believe. Yes. Diane, you
Yes.
would know.
Yeah.
Yes, it is 1% on all property. Residentials do get a $100,000 exemption. So it would be, if you had a $500,000 home, you'd be based on $400,000 at 1% of your total tax.
So I guess just to make sure I'm still clear, because I understand it's a surtax.
Yeah.
Is that already included in taxes? The 46 million that's estimated in our general fund sources and uses summary, or is that?
Yeah.
I thought it was 1% in addition to our taxes.
It's the
I'm
amount
gonna-
to be.
I was going to say, I would default to Sarah because I'm not sure where Jim is coming from with the
Because
number.
we're paying 1% over and above our taxes for the community preservation. So I guess what I'm wondering is the 46 million of our recommended taxes or projected taxes for 2021, is that just our real estate taxes, or is also our real estate taxes plus the 1% surcharge? Because otherwise what I'm looking for is where does the 280 show as a wash? Because right now under the column we're looking at, it's an expense, right?
Right. And it's in the 46.
It is in the 40s.
Sarah, can you answer that?
Yes, it's in the 46.
So you calculate the tax and then you add the 1% additional to that to
Let me
get,
go back and double check my calculation.
I guess, yeah, that would be
And I
my,
can say 100%.
yeah.
So I will come back and answer you for the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, moving right along. It says real estate abatements. That would be the overlay account. Last year, we raised 169,549. This year, 174,085. An increase of $4,500 roughly, or 2%, 0.7%. This is a flexible amount that can be used to balance the tax recapitulation sheet, but the purpose of the account is to cover abatements and exemptions that are granted by the Board of Assessors. The exemptions being the elderly, the blind, the veterans that are entitled to a reduction in tax as long as they qualify. So I think right now, I would say this is okay. It's with the realization that this amount may change. You in agreement with that, Diane?
Yes, I am. We have really decreased that amount since the Municipal Modernization Act went into effect, because now it doesn't limit us to holding exactly or using exactly what is in the fiscal year. We're looking at many fiscal years is now in one bucket. So if we did run short in fiscal 2021, we do have an additional amount from prior fiscal years. Eventually, we will probably have to raise that amount, because right now we are just barely breaking even with this dollar amount, but we do know that we have the reserves from prior fiscal years that is now considered all one fund.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chris,
Yes.
if I may, Chris, one caveat to this, and my concern is that with this pandemic, there may be a lot of more folks that come out and ask for some sort of abatement, whether or not it gets approved. Is that to me, that might have an impact on this?
Abatements are pretty well set with guidelines in the law. There is, there are different types of abatements that can be given, different types of exemptions. However, if a person comes in for a real estate tax abatement, it is usually based on the proof that they have that their home or their property is not worth what it's assessed for. So it's very rarely that it's given on financial conditions. So being an old-time assessor, I can tell you that I don't think at this point in time we have to be concerned with this account taking a hit. And as Diane said, we had a lot of years where there were, residue in there. There was leftover monies, which is now formed into one fund. So even though it's specified that this is for fiscal 21, should she run short, there is a backup of overlay monies that can be taken from. So I don't think that's a concern for this year.
Okay, my comment really revolved around not just the realized abatements and the abatements that people can apply for, but what about the small businesses which are going to be hurting, which have not been working, and they may be applying for something?
I don't know if there's any provision in the law for that, Tom. That would be something that would be a state program, a federal program. And a lot of businesses, unfortunately, are in leased and rented properties. So it really doesn't involve the Board of Assessors. So loss at this point in time, in my experience, that isn't something. Maybe Diane knows something about something that may be in the works or something that has come up in the past couple of years. Diane, I rely on your expertise.
I was going to say, I agree with what Chris just stated, that abatement and exemptions are based on the actual use of the property and not the financial condition of the business. So I do know that the governor has put out a lot of different types of grants for small businesses. And I believe at even the federal level that they're going to be addressing it. And hopefully this will be a shorter term that everyone will be able to get back on their feet and be productive again.
Thank you. Moving on,
Chris,
shall we
can I-
mark that as having been taken care of?
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm all right with it.
I think the next two items, state charges and state offset, the numbers may come from the governor's budget proposal at this point in time, correct?
Yes, that,
Sarah?
that is where they come from.
Okay,
Just if I may, on the real estate abatement, just so everyone is aware, Diane and I do meet once a year to discuss that entire bucket to make sure that we aren't overfunded and have too much money in there. But we do take a regular review of that to make sure that it's still within reason.
good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, no prior year bills at this point in time, we have no knowledge of. So it looks as though the total general fund uses is up 5.8%, which is substantial. 62,103,424 versus proposed for this year, 65,686,587, an increase of 3,583,163. Very obvious that that needs to be pared down to come into a manageable budget without a large tax rate increase. I would say for today, we've done our work, and we'll be meeting next Wednesday. Having gone through all this, do you all feel overwhelmed?
A little.
Chris, I did have just a question on the state charges. I know they come to us through the cherry sheet or whatever, but
Right.
I don't recall it typically being that kind of an increase in the state charges. And it seems like that's like made up of a number of different little categories. Is there something in there that was a huge increase for some reason? Sarah, do you recall?
Give me one moment and I can take a quick look to tell you which one. Okay, hold on.
$9.3 just seems like a little bit of a kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost double digits.
Right.
Yeah, that isn't.
Or I'm fine with that just being a follow-up for next meeting too.
Yeah, let me just send it to you for the next one. That will be quicker.
That was state charges?
Yeah,
State charges, yeah. And that too is probably going to change in one manner or another once the legislature works through the governor's budget and makes their own changes. So I consider it a number that's in flux as well.
Mhm.
but you'll send us a breakdown of what that 430 entails. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
All right, sorry, Chris.
that's no apologies needed. It's a valid question. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I thank you all for the work you did today and the input you've given us. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts to putting this budget together, and basically we've scratched the surface in these first three sessions. So,
Chris, prior to adjourning, one quick question in terms of efficiency. So this week we can work on individually the review of the capital. And I'm guessing that Ryan Ryan's team will be working on the capital as well. And at some point in time, we can compare notes and we'll have something going forward for our next meeting. And prior to that, I mean, as well as that, myself and Kathy will probably have the luxury of maybe having a little bit more information regarding an executive session with the school committee.
Excellent, excellent. And I think one of my goals too is to like revisit the departments that we have marked as flagged and as a hold, and we will decide who we want to meet with in our meetings going through the month of May. We may have to, depending on the number of them, we may have to step up and meet twice a week. But we'll decide that after this coming meeting on the 29th.
Sounds like a plan. So I will make a motion. It is 11:40. Make motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Oh, look at all the seconds.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please
Oh, I
vote.
guess I gotta
Yeah.
ask.
We need a
Diane,
roll call vote for this.
Yes, for everything.
yes. Diane Bishop, adjourn.
Yes.
Mike Kane,
Yes.
Yes.
Jim Broderick,
That's
and Tom O'Connor.
Yes.
Chris Sonia, yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes.
You too.